Yo, what's good, bro? Today I'm going to show you how you can make heartbreaking pain melodies for Lil Tjay, Stunna Gambino and all those New York pain artists. Let's go. First of all, we want to choose a BPM around 90 to 100. This time I chose 93. And you want to choose a soft piano, a very soft, mellow piano. And as for the piano you want to find a soft, mellow piano. Two good ones I can recommend is the LA Custom C7 Mellow or the softest one. Both from Keyscape, but you can get to the soft sound with pretty much any piano. If you lower down the velocity, if you add some mellowing effects to it, you can get to a pretty soft sound, but these are just my go-to ones. Yeah, and the first part I laid down with this mellow piano was this MIDI. I'm going to show it to you and then I'm going to break it down into what I did exactly. Looks pretty simple, but it's a little bit more complicated. This is actually in C sharp minor, but I'm going to pitch it up to D minor to explain it to you guys. Maybe it's easier to understand if there aren't as many sharps and stuff in there. So first of all, what we have pretty much three chords. We have a D minor chord, C major chord, and an A sharp minor chord. Now those just from the root notes. But what I like to do is to keep the top notes fairly the same. So here we have the D minor chord, the D and the fifth. And then we have another D, an octave higher, and the F. That's pretty much a D minor chord. But with all those pain samples, I like to go between the 2 and the 3 of the first chord, of the root chord, in that case D minor. And just play around those two because this creates a lot of tension and a kind of sad feeling if you listen to it. So you see the main melody is always centered around the 2 and the 3 everywhere here. We have the second chord here, which is a C major, C, E, G. And what I always like to do at the end of the 4th bar or the 8th bar is I have to kind of those steps. So like kind of stepping up, which gives a nice transition effect. Then what we have next is an A sharp minor, but as you can see, we didn't complete the chord, so there's no D in there, but there's an A in there. Now, what that A and that A sharp does, it clashes a little bit. But that's what we want to have. We want to have that tension and the tension carrying over, and it can resolve back into the one. So if you listen to that, it's very tense. It's a little bit tense. You're just kind of waiting for that tension to resolve. And that's when we get into the first chord again. It resolves the tension from the second two. What I mostly do is I always come up with the first pattern and then I almost duplicate that pattern over again and again, but just change some things. So as you can see, this here is the same, almost the same pattern. Just this note is changed and I've removed some notes there and I've added these steps in the end, but it's pretty simple. Now one thing I wanted to show you as well is the different chords and chords progression you can use for those pain melodies. And in the example before, we used the 1, 7, 6 chord progression, right? I've just created this quick pattern. As you can hear, it's always between the 2 and the 3. which creates a kind of sad feeling, I don't know. Cannot explain why, but it just sounds good. And that's how I usually go about things. I just create this first pattern, then I create the bass notes, and then we add stuff around this pattern. But I'm not gonna do that, I'm just gonna show you the different bass note variations you can do. So that's the first one, where it's just a simple going down one tone of the scale every time. Or we can also bring this one to the A sharp, bring the A sharp to the third. So this would be the second of the scale, the E, so the third is the F. And we'll bring this one to the seventh, which is the C. And then this will sound like this. As you can hear, it's a totally different sound, and all we did, we just changed the root notes. Now what you can also do is you start at the 1, then you go to the 3 directly, then you go down to the 7, and go down to the 6, which will sound like this. Now you can also change those two, so go to the 6 there, go to 7 there. The MIDI we just broke down for you, we had the last one like this. We can also put that one lower or on the 7 again. It's pretty much up to you, but those are like the 4 combinations you can make to make pain melodies. And as I said, most times you can just keep the top melody the same and just change the bass notes. It will create a very fire pain sound. As for effects on the piano, I have a low cut EQ, cuts out everything between 100 Hz, so it doesn't clash with the bass or 808 later. I have a round reverb, 1.7 second delay, not so big, I don't want it to be muddy. And I've added a little delay from Comeback Kit, just to give it some more ambience, because the melody isn't too full itself, but we want to fill it out a little bit more with effects. Next up I added was this ambient sound. I think you all know the sound if I pitch it up an octave. Probably all already heard that sound, but I like to pitch it down so it stretches it a bit, so it's more unique. As for effects, I just have a little EQ to cut out the lows. Next up, what you always want to do is have a layer. So here I layered the first melody, pretty much copied everything over. Besides the root notes, I took the bass notes and pitched them up an octave as well, so it's more in the same, because you don't want to add too much low end from a pad or something. This is what that layer sounds like. Just a very soft in the background sound. I got this from Expand. It's all Angels preset. Just add a relatively big reverb, 2.9 seconds decay, and an EQ cutting out the highs and some lows to make it really a filtered, laid back in the background sound. One thing you cannot forget when you make those New York Pain melodies, you always want to have some vocal, some ambient vocal shot, one shot, or even some phrases. In that case I used some phrases from Arcade, but yeah, my favorite places to get those phrases are either Arcade or Splice, to be honest. And this is what the phrase sounds like. Pretty simple. As for effects, add a round reverb again. 2.5 second delay this time, a little bit bigger. And one thing I love doing with vocals is just cutting out all the highs and the lows, of course, but just cutting out the highs will make it more in the background and won't make it interfere with an artist singing or rapping over the beat. Now to add some bounce, I've added this New York paint tomb and it sounds like this. Just gives it some bounce for an intro section or something like that. Last thing I added was a bass, just following the simple root notes we laid down earlier. It sounds like this. Pretty simple, but whenever you are kind of making those pain melodies, just want to go for a smooth sub bass with not a lot of high hands. If it has, just cut it out. And the bass I always use is from Heat Up 3, Urban East bass. It's very smooth sub bass. So yeah, that's the whole video. I hope you learned something. I hope you learned something from the chords. I hope you're enjoying the daily videos. If you want to know how I managed to chart number 23 as a music producer, check this video out.